Southfield and beyond. It is so nice to have you with us today as we tape this show on a very important day. This is March 24th, and we have thousands and thousands of people marching and getting together all over the world to speak out against gun violence. And we want to speak about gun education. And with my panel today, it is a star panel. Just thought you all would like to know that. We have 2 high school students, we have a mother who represents her organization, and we have a gun expert person, and we are so pleased. So I'm going to read the bios because you have to know who these people are. We just didn't pull them up off the street, you know. We have Veronica Vankowski. She is a junior at University High School in Southfield. Since the names have changed, I am so confused, but it is University High School, correcto? Yes. Yay. Okay. She's the captain of her varsity debate team. Cool. Which is one of the reasons that she has joined us on this panel today. She's interested in politics as well as gun control. She became especially concerned about the need for gun control and education after the Pulse nightclub situation, which was unbelievable. Monique Wheeler is a lifetime resident of Southfield. She's a senior at University High School Academy. She'll be attending the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor in the fall. She is the member of one of our jewels in the city, in the region, the Mosaic Youth Theater of Detroit. She's a current student leader and has performed at the Apollo Theater. I mean, seriously, the Apollo Theater and Carnegie Hall. And she's been on tour with, Josh Groban. And she is a co-founder of Say What Your Organization
is. It's hashtag StopHT2K17.
Try to say that fast. Yes. Created to inform youth of the dangers of human trafficking. By the way, we did a show on human trafficking about a year ago. She's also a Nordstrom, no kidding, a Nordstrom fashion ambassador. This girl has no talent. She feels her generation has the power to change the world. I think you're right. As a young adult, her opportunities to help make the world a better place are endless. She believes that gun control has been a major debate for far too long and will determine the outcome of our country's future. I think you're right, sweetheart. Yes. And now, I'm so sorry to say that one of our people didn't get here today, and I will talk with him another day. I certainly will. But we do have Bill Cusick. Can I say Bill?
You certainly
can. Oh, thank goodness. I'm so happy. Because William is just so scary. William! Go to your room. Is that what happened to you when you were a kid?
A couple times. That probably still happens. And I don't mind it, by the way.
That's good. Okay. So Bill is the owner of the Action Impact gun stores here. The first store was in Southfield. I remember when you opened in 2008. And the second is way on the other side of town in East Point.
It is.
How do you gallop from one to the other?
I just put up with 8 Mile road traffic and listen to something nice on the radio.
Excellent. And he is a U.S. Army veteran.
I am.
When did you serve?
I served 1972 through 1976.
A very interesting period in our country.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Also a retired police officer where?
In Oakland County, I was a detective commander. I was a SWAT officer and a SWAT commander.
Don't mess with him. I spent 31 years.
Yeah, I'm also an attorney.
Yes, I know you are. It says so right here. Yeah, well, I didn't get to it yet.
Oh, okay.
You are a many-faceted person. Took me 93 years to get through this thing.
Uni, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Well, I have a solution. Never grow up.
That's a good idea.
Peter Pan.
Been accused of that, too.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm very, very wary of grown-ups. or people who think they're grown up. Yes, I know, Monique, you're not going to survive this show, I can feel that. But it is a serious subject, and we are going to get through this. We are. And you have also appeared on many local shows.
I have. I've appeared on certainly on local networks, radio and television, as well as most national networks.
And so when they talk to you, what do you speak about?
It's normally I'm talking about firearms and the law relating to firearms and how I run my business and some of the controversy I certainly have become involved in.
Sure. I'll bet you have. You are one tough son. You really are. Now we come, I love this name. I love the difference. Carmi, being quite Italian, I'll bet
Yes.
you. I'm so smart. And then you're married to a guy named Finn.
Right.
I love that. That combination must be pretty explosive
Oh,
sometimes.
not really, no.
Oh,
It
good.
works for us.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm so happy. Well, here she says, I'm going to quote you after
Okay.
raising my family and focusing on a career, transportation, one of my favorite subjects. What?
Motor carrier. Trucking. I
Oh,
worked in the
cool.
trucking industry for 30 years in various aspects of it. My last 10 years were in safety.
Well,
Drug testing and accidents, and, all the things that are involved in keeping drivers and the public safe.
boy, I'm glad we found you. And you knew that when retirement came, you say, I would be volunteering in any way you could. School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, clarified what you needed to do. Despair and sorrow became rage at our society's inability and unwillingness to protect children and all Americans from gun violence. A text message invited her to a meeting at the Troy Public Library, not my library in Southfield, I'm teasing, to discuss starting a local chapter of Moms Demand Action. That's a great name. Approximately 25 people attended at that first meeting. That was interesting.
It's a significant number of
It
people just to
is.
show up to discuss something that hadn't existed before.
Exactly, because most people don't want to tear themselves away from their whatever they're doing, bad or good. And the Oakland Macomb chapter was born. That's excellent. 25 people attended, very good. You became the membership lead.
Right.
Good for you. Although you had no idea what that meant.
Right. None of us
What
did.
did you get yourself into? It's true. Never jump into something you don't know. But you learn. You learn. And the current leaders are very good. Many of the current leaders of your chapter were at that first meeting. That's good. And you have welcomed new leaders as more volunteers join. And you're very proud of the people you've met and you worked with through this organization, or of the changes that we are you are creating. This is cool. Now, I have to do a little personal disclosure. Because of my dad, who weaned his twin daughters on Western novels and movies, especially teaching us about Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, Wyatt Earp, and also he was ahead of his time. The defense of our Native Americans. This was when nobody cared. I'm proud of him to this day. So I still love the Old West. And the reruns of all things, The Rifleman. I never miss The Rifleman. I share that with a lovely lady who was, I think, in her 90s. A dear friend of mine is a proud owner of a Colt 45. So I know about this stuff. And I've never worried about guns as much as what has happened with our school kids. And I want to read aloud the Second Amendment of our Constitution, just to make sure everybody understands it. A well-regulated militia, being necessarily to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And we have to think about that because it means a lot. It means freedom to do what we would like to be able to do. For me, it means you are free to do this until you hurt somebody. I know this is going to be a long introduction, but there's so much to learn. I found this in a box in my storage room. I hadn't seen it in many years. I don't know how I found it, but it was there. A quotation. A dear friend. January 1, 1995. Yudi's daughter, last night was shot and killed. I am still reeling in stunned disbelief at the impact of those words. I woke up this morning with a pounding headache and stayed in bed for a while in hopes that it would somehow go away if I rested long enough, or in the right position, or something. Before long, my girls came in with my sister, and they hugged me and tumbled around me. My sister uttered those words. She was shot. Oh my God, I thought. Is she all right? Nope. And killed. Oh my God, how? Where? They were in New Orleans at the town's New Year celebration. A fellow celebrant rang in the New Year by firing a round from his gun into the air. Amy and her two girlfriends, one on either side, were watching the ball come down when the popping sound was heard. Firecrackers? A gunshot? Certainly nothing unusual for a raucous New Year celebration. Suddenly, Amy dropped to the ground. Dear God, why? Why her? Why at the start of a New Year's? Why all this insanity, this blatant disregard for human life? Where in the hell do these folks think their bullets go after being shot in the air? In an instant, a life is no longer, and the lives of her mother and father, her grandparents, her brother, her sister-in-law and nephew, her aunts and uncles, her cousin, who happens to be my daughter, who was more her sister and best friend. Her friends, the people who witnessed her death, will be forever changed. If you go to New Orleans today, you will see a crystal sculpture of Amy in the House of Blues, because an artist who saw her picture all over the news, who did not know her, felt that he had to do something, so she's still there. And how many others? How many other lives stolen? How many more survivors whose lives have been torn apart? I still cannot believe it's real. That one tiny moment, and the world is forever changed. So, let's go on. I don't know how we can speak after that, but everybody has survived. However, my twin, her sister, never has been the same. She has gone into mental illness, and she's just hardly alive to this very day. So the interesting thing is the march today. We're taping this on a very exciting day. Marching today in Washington, everywhere. I don't know, is there a march here in Detroit?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Aha, okay. So now the questions for you, because you poor things. You heard my long speech, but I think it needed to be out there before we could discuss anything. But there are two slogans: never again, and enough is enough. So does that resonate with people? Anybody?
Yeah, I think so. Every time there's a sort of mass shooting in the United States, we hear never again. More recently is when I've heard enough is enough, like as of the recent school walkouts. But we hear never again after most tragedies, not even just gun violence. And it seems to just be something that people say now because after the tragedy, maybe a few weeks in the news, people forget about it and nothing's ever done about it. So you can't really say never again if nothing's going to be done about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I agree. There's always an immediate outcry after these shootings that make headlines, because honestly, most shootings don't.
Mm-hmm.
But it does, the media moves on to other stories and people go on with their lives because they're not personally affected. This time, I think is different because of you kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a group, you stood up and said, BS. Enough is enough. We're not going to stand for it anymore.
Right.
And I can't say any stronger how proud I am of all these young people who took the step that the adults haven't taken after all these years.
I feel like our generation finally is saying enough is enough, because so many people have been affected by these mass shootings and mass gun violence. It's gone on for way too long, and enough really is enough.
Hear, hear.
Bill.
Well, I think I have to be certainly tactful and careful of how I say certain things. I commend everybody at this
You can do
table.
whatever you want.
Well, I understand that, but I think everybody needs to understand that not only do I respect everybody at this table, I certainly commend their action and involvement. I think the issues I have is that a lot of Americans' opinions are generated by our media. And a lot of those stories that we see, it depends where these stories occur as to how much coverage they're going to get. And so I certainly have an issue with that. And so to me, the issue, I suppose perhaps I've been forced to have somewhat of a tainted view of human beings, but when I study my history, which I'm a huge history buff, I notice that human beings have been killing human beings forever. I also strongly believe they will continue to do so for whatever motivates them, whether it be religion, whether it be politics, whether it be mental illness. I'm concerned that it will always continue. And I'm not sure that that's a battle that we can win, trying to stop that. I don't think, certainly my generation won't do it, and I hope and pray that these kids' generation can do that, but I'm very pessimistic about that opinion. So I would like, then we kind of seem to pick and choose what objects that we want to protest against, because if I start looking at numbers, am I looking at how people are killed, or am I looking at the number of people that are killed? So as I watch mainstream media and I watch the protest, a firearm has seemed to have taken center stage. And I kind of think to myself, I go, well, it probably should. I certainly don't have an issue with that. But at the same time, I think there's more dangerous objects probably right here in this room than what's become the poster child of protest, which becomes an AR rifle. The cell phones in our pockets probably cause more deaths than those AR rifles do, but we don't want
Explain
to
that.
confront that.
Explain it.
Well, let's start looking at motor vehicle deaths. What is it we're afraid of? Where are we most likely to be injured? So we raise a lot of awareness for guns. I get that, and I certainly don't have issues with that, but what about these other things? We don't see much about that. We'll have a little, somebody will do some promotion to stop texting and so forth, but I'll tell you what, if I look at something that I might be afraid of, and it's not firearms, it's automobiles. And that's what scares me the most, because I think I'm more likely to die in an automobile crash than I am to be shot. And so I think maybe all these issues, I guess, we can all confront and at some point in time, but this AR rifle really has taken the center stage.
Okay, so, well, because I have, watching the Rifleman, big deal, but I don't understand how that became front and center, and what we can do to, it's a very lethal weapon, am I correct?
Well, it's because it's been used in what I will refer to as high-profile mass shootings. So how do we even describe a mass shooting? I think there might be some consensus, perhaps, that it's 4 or more people. And if we decide that is in fact a mass shooting, I'm going to tell you this AR rifle has been used in a small percentage of those mass shootings. I think it's handguns if it's shootings. Then we start comparing that to automobile accidents and everything else, and I guess I'm just a realist. I just think that, wow, can we solve this? I think maybe they've been trying since the beginning of time to stop humans from killing other humans, and it's going to continue. it will continue in one form or another.
Well, I
Carmen?
agree. Human nature has never changed. It's had various veneers put over it, depending on which society you were part of. But people will kill other people. That, you're right, never going to change. But as our group believes that we shouldn't make it so easy for them.
How is that possible?
Well, by having common sense regulations on the use of guns and who can have them, and at what point those guns are removed from various people for illegal actions they've taken. Domestic abusers, for example.
Don't we already have common sense gun laws? We
Okay,
have.
let's list some of those laws because
Domestic violence abusers are prohibited from owning firearms.
They are, but I'm sure you've heard of the boyfriend loophole. That's one of the ways that domestic abusers get.
what is that?
fired.
For
Well, what
the
it is,
rest of us who don't
the
know.
domestic violence laws in most states and our federal law only allow for, they only cover intimate partners that are married or related or
That's
live
not
in the
true.
same house.
That's not true.
I'm afraid it is. And so there's, if you have a boyfriend, let's say, and that boyfriend becomes abusive, you report them, they get a misdemeanor, because let's face that too, most of those are misdemeanors, not felonies, because they get pled down a lot for one thing, and some incidents don't rise to the level of felony. So you have a misdemeanor abuser who then at some point wants to buy a gun. They go through a background check, and they're not going to be prohibited because it doesn't fall into the category of your live-in boyfriend or husband or
Yes, it does.
ex-husband.
It's domestic violence. Anybody convicted of domestic violence is prohibited from legally purchasing a firearm. It's one of the primary 11 questions on a 4473.
What's a 4473 for
It's a
those?
Background check
federal
form.
form
Thank you.
that you fill out when you intend to purchase a firearm, which then enables us to conduct a background check with the FBI. One of the questions is, have you been convicted of domestic violence? If you answer yes, we don't even do the background check. You're prohibited from purchasing that firearm. Boyfriends and anybody in an intimate relationship is subject to the domestic violence rules in the state of Michigan.
How long is the background check? How long does that usually take?
Anywhere from 2 minutes to 7 days.
Do you feel like that's enough time for you to get to know them in 44 questions? You think I would get to know you in 44 questions?
No.
Me either.
So how could that be improved? What would you say as somebody who is very much involved in weapons?
Okay, I don't want to dominate this conversation. I
Oh,
want these
please,
kids to have their
no, that's-
opportunity, But let me tell you what I do.
Please, because this is
So-
information we need.
Okay, so I'll tell you how I conduct my business. I will actually engage you in conversation, and I'm going to try and determine what is your intent in wanting to purchase this firearm. What level of training have you had? What level of training do you intend to participate in? Have you participated in any firearms training in the past? So we do our best to scrutinize the purchasers. I don't have to do that by law. You need to know, if you pass that background check, I can legally transfer you that firearm.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of hold myself and my staff to a higher standard, I guess you might call it an ethical standard, where we don't just do that. So the big debate has been this past month whether people under 21 can purchase long guns. And I've taken a lot of heat because I don't have a blanket policy that I'm going to sell a gun to everybody. I will turn down gun sales to people under 21 if I'm just not comfortable with it. Does that open me up to some liability? It certainly does. I understand that. I don't want to fall in the Dick's Sporting Good trap because I'm not sure I can afford that litigation. But that's how I do it. So sometimes, I will tell you this, I'll be quite candid. I saw a gun sale to a person under 21 this week. So when I inquired of my staff, I said, why did this transfer take place? And they said, well, he's in here with his parents, he's in the sporting shooting, and they talked at length, and so that transfer was in fact made. At the same time, I get a phone call the other night. We've got a kid in here, 19, wants to buy an AR rifle. I said, what does he have to say? He doesn't care which one as long as it shoots fast.
Oh boy.
Okay, so then
Oh boy.
you know what the response to that is?
Don't
We're not
do it.
transferring the firearm.
Don't do it.
But legally I could have, and I think she knows that I could as long as that person passes that background check. So,
Do you think the background check then, I'm just asking because this is so new to me.
okay.
Do you think it needs to be more severe? Is there a way to do it so that you catch somebody?
I don't
I'm just
know.
asking.
I don't know how much severe you can make it. So what are we looking at? Well, we're looking for criminal convictions of certain types. Not all criminal convictions, mind you. Certainly felonies and certain misdemeanors that have violence attached to them. That's with that background check. We're looking at people dishonorably discharged from military service. Has anybody renounced their citizenship? Has anybody been convicted of domestic violence? Has anybody, and here's a key one for you kids to pay attention to, have you been involuntarily committed to any mental institution? Now, there's a difference between having a mental illness and having been involuntarily committed. I mean, that's
tough.
light years different. So there's an area that's just begging to be addressed. But with the HIPAA laws in Michigan, how do we learn if somebody has a mental illness if they haven't been involuntarily committed? There's no way to determine that.
Well, excuse me. And honestly, though, people who have been involuntarily committed to mental institutions make up an extremely small percentage of people, and an even
Correct.
smaller percentage of people who are looking for guns. The mentally ill are more likely to be victims of crime of all kinds,
I would
including
agree.
gun violence. They are not, as a group, violent. There is no mental illness diagnosis that is predictive of violent behavior, none. So the better indicator of future violent acts is a history of domestic violence. In over 50% of cases that end up being mass shootings, 4 or more, not talking about the ones everybody's heard of, but those mass shootings that happen daily, those are domestic violence situations.
She's absolutely correct.
And some of the ones that are the ones that make the headlines began as a domestic violence situation. That violence begins at home, and then it gets brought out
escalates.
into the public.
It escalates. Wow. So what about that young kid who just shot his girl in the school this past week, and she's now gone? And of course they got him at the site too. They
You wouldn't have
destroyed
known
him.
about
Killed.
it if it didn't occur in a school. And
Yes.
if it didn't occur on the heels of the Florida shooting,
That's
you
true.
wouldn't even be aware of it.
Wow.
And I'm venturing to guess she's not the only girl killed by a boyfriend this
True.
past week.
Yes.
It just happened to be a story that the media threw out there on the heels of the Florida shooting. Otherwise, you wouldn't even known it.
No, I definitely agree that the media likes to pick and choose what stories they want to represent, what's deemed as a tragedy that needs to be taken care of. That's one of the things we talk about and debate a lot. When we talk about it, we more focus on like the race side of things, where like race may play into a factor of whether or not, or like the area it occurs. Where if it's a shooting in maybe a bad part of Detroit, it may not get the same media coverage as a
Kudos
school
to you, young
school
lady.
shooting.
Kudos to you.
And it's definitely
true,
an
yeah.
issue because, you know, school shootings aren't the same. School shootings are treated way differently than the shootings that are going on every single day, even though they don't happen as often.
Right.
And it's definitely a problem that needs to be addressed, where we can't just focus in one area of gun violence. Something needs to be done about all types of gun violence.
Absolutely. The school shootings necessarily gain the attention they do because they're horrific. These are children in a place where they should be safe. So naturally, the media is going to,
They're going to jump
they're
in.
going to jump on it, and they're going to, people are going to read the paper and they're going to watch the news if that's on it. So of course, the media is going to, if you will, exploit that. But and there's a reason for it too. But there are shootings every single day that will not make the news because you would need a news station just for that. Because there are literally 96 Americans shot and killed by a gun every single day in this country, and a couple of hundred more injured. And as you were saying about your relative, there's a huge ripple effect. It's
Oh, yes.
it's not just
Oh,
the
yes.
person's immediate family; it's
My
the
niece,
responders.
that was my niece, my dearest. That was
Right.
my.
It's the
and-
witnesses.
yeah.
It's everybody involved.
And by the way, she worked for an international corporation, and people from all over the world came to her funeral because she was so well liked and she was an astonishing person. But the other thing that I wanted to ask you, as far as regulations and things like that, I just saw, and I'm sure you all did, that in urban schools, this was in USA Today, if I'm not mistaken, there's they have metal detectors when you walk into the school. Their backpacks are searched. But just in urban schools, when we talk about race, that's a fascinating little item for me. If they feel that they need the detectors, and these shootings have been in very white communities, where's that correlation? Somebody answer that question.
I think that correlation occurs because there's a stigma against African Americans, and you automatically assume, oh, they're violent. Even with the whole stop and frisk ideology that America has, like that whole idea that they're typically more violent, but you don't really hear about school shootings in urban cities. Even, for example, like schools in Detroit that have metal detectors, you don't hear about school shootings there. School shootings don't occur there, and it could even be partially because there are metal detectors, but that needs to be a whole thing that the country has. If we're talking about school shootings, then every school needs to have metal detectors, not just urban schools.
Plus, clear backpacks, which is, I just thought that was a really interesting little piece in that newspaper.
I'm just concerned, and I think first time and forever I feel optimistic about our future because the perspectives that's already been shared here and confront difficult issues, and they do so in a very advanced manner, so I'm very impressed. I think I'm concerned from a tactical perspective that we can secure our schools, but somebody who's determined will find alternative means or alternative locations. And that's why I'm going to encourage these kids and their friends, you better stay vigilant. And you have to understand, I mean, fear is a great motivator.
Yeah.
And fear will cause people to take action. So I don't mind them being afraid. I really don't, because then I think they'll up their awareness game. That's what I think.
Well, it's fascinating that you say they need to, because it's through history. It's always been the young people that have come forth with every issue that has come along in every bad situation. It's the young ones that have jumped in, because the older folks either are tired.
We're tired and we don't like the cold. So young
But
kids,
that's
why every time there's civil disturbance, it's always in the summer. So.
See,
Well,
yes.
I'm sorry. I think that
No,
young
please.
people do get tired of seeing that the adults are tired and not accomplishing anything in their eyes. And, somebody's got to do it. And finally they say, we'll do it ourselves. You're the grown-ups. You're
Yes.
supposed to be taking care of this, and you're not. So now we're going to.
And they've always been vilified, even with the flower children in the 60s. And who was it that went on those buses down south? They were college kids. And I used, some of my friends say they're not kids. Oh, gosh, dang it, yes, they are. They're very young, and they have fear, don't get me wrong. If you see the movie Freedom Song, they were terrified.
Let me address this. I mean, we raised the issue, so I'm just
Yes.
going to hit it head on.
Go for
And
it.
it kind of started at the beginning of this presentation. A lot of our impressions and our opinions are formed from fiction.
Yes,
So,
that's why I brought it up.
You just presented that it was college kids, but I'm going to submit that it was a whole lot of people. And it started
Yes.
hundreds of years ago. There were plenty of people
I was going to go back to that.
objecting to discrimination and slavery and things like that. So, but what a movie's made one time, and because some kids were killed, unfortunately, that story was told, but there was lots of people. And then you tell me about the riflemen and the Native American Indians, and I'm going to tell you that Hollywood portrayal of those times in this country is horribly flawed. Horribly flawed.
Of course.
Yet we form our opinions based on fiction. And there's an inherent problem, because if our opinions are flawed, the action we take as a result of those opinions can be flawed too.
There's no question. There were young heroes as far back as the Revolution. Who were the guys that dressed as Indians and dumped the tea? They were young kids that did this.
But
What I'm
more
saying-
Indians killed other Indians
No,
than
no, what
white
I'm-
people ever did.
Well, there's
but
no-
we don't want to hear that.
You're absolutely-
Hollywood hasn't portrayed that.
Yes.
Now, nobody should be killing anybody.
True.
That needs to be clear. But unfortunately, we just can't get everybody to feel that way.
Well, people do have inherent prejudices.
Yes.
And they came down from their families for generation upon generation. Any immigrant that came to this country was always
Absolutely.
looked down upon by the people that came before. It's
Until
just
somebody new came. And then
until
it was
the
their
next
turn.
person. You know, the lace curtain. I love the expression, the lace curtain Irish. Does anybody hear about that? Do you know about that? What that means?
What was it?
The lace curtain Irish. Well, I'm so smart. It's because when the Irish came, and they were the potato famine in Ireland brought millions, thousands and thousands of Irish people here. But they were layered in class and caste as well. And there were some Irish folks that felt that when they came here, if they put lace curtains in their window, the people that were living here longer than they were would not discriminate against them because they were elegant people. So
Well-
there's always one group that's always against another group all through the history of time.
But then we're hypocritical, because Irish,
Yes.
German, these were our soldiers in the Revolutionary War.
They
They were
certainly-
our soldiers in the Civil War.
They
It
certainly-
wasn't all Americans, and trust me.
They weren't.
But for people from other countries, I don't think this country would have even been able to form an army
Of course not.
to upset the English government. I don't think that would have happened. So then that raises the issue. This month we don't want persons under 21 to purchase a firearm. Yet we send people under 21 to war.
Exactly.
We provided the means and the training to kill other human
people.
beings.
And then when they
yet
come
when
home-
they come home, you can't buy a gun, and by the way, you can't drink a beer.
And not only that,
Lord
they're
have
damaged.
mercy.
And
Right,
they're
they're
damaged.
damaged.
They're horribly
So
damaged.
maybe the age to go to war should be raised, instead of the age to do all of these other things should be lowered.
I don't think we'd field a very formidable army if we did that.
I don't either, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So,
well,
Maybe, it depends where you're at. I mean,
Yeah.
here in Southfield, we feel pretty secure. If we were in
Yes.
Syria, I don't think we'd be having this discussion.
Well, no,
because we
no
probably
doubt.
wouldn't have left our houses. So,
Exactly.
we're blessed. And
exactly.
it's,
Wow.
it's hard, isn't
Well,
it?
look at this. We came here just to talk about gun rules, and it's the history of our world.
It is.
It is we've had violence in every age. We've had disrespect of every age. We've had who are those people and do I have to be with those people in every age. It's sadly human nature. And I guess we have to I'm an optimist. I always have been, and I always say we can go forward. We can go forward. There's this $50,000 a year grant that's been floating around the Senate and the House of Representatives. And it's called Teachers and Officers for a New Federal Grant to train schools to identify signs of school violence before it happens. Okay? And it sets up an anonymous reporting system and to authorize an additional $25,000 for schools to install new locks, metal detectors, and panic buttons. And we know already, because we've talked about it, there's some urban schools already have this. Okay. Now, according to what I heard either yesterday or this morning, because I've been glued, the Senate version also has a bipartisan support. House version allows those with concealed carry. Now, this is interesting. They allow, their House version allows those people with concealed carry permits to carry guns across state lines, which could, this could prevent the passage in the Senate.
Are you talking about the concealed carry reciprocity law? Is that what we're discussing? The federal bill that's out there?
They're talking about the fact to get all this equipment into all the schools.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm not sure. With the carrying concealed across the state lines, I didn't
That-
know
well,
if that was related to that school
It
bill
wasn't.
or not.
It wasn't, but it jumped in all by itself.
Oh, all by itself. Yes,
all
that happens.
by itself, it jumped in. So that people, it stymied them because people couldn't come together on
Right.
what would be, and we got to do that.
Well, it kind of does relate to the concealed carry reciprocity, though. What that bill is that would allow, let's say you're from a state that has very strict rules about who can get a concealed carry permit. And someone is from another state where they don't have any rules. There are some states that don't have any limitations on who can concealed carry. If this bill becomes law, concealed carry reciprocity, then that person who didn't have to, pay for a permit or have any training or anything like that will be able to conceal carry that gun anywhere in the United States, basically overriding whatever state laws are in effect elsewhere. So that it's a whole nother
That's a
whole
whole
nother
nother
issue,
ballgame.
a whole nother issue.
Yes.
So, and that, takes into play, who wants to make the rules about guns in their society? And how far should those rules reach,
So
and
let's
who
t-
should they apply to?
So just pretend I don't know what I'm talking about. What are the actual rules that you have to follow, a person has to follow, before he or she, the actual gun rules to actually acquire a gun?
To acquire a gun?
Yes.
Well, if this
Well,
could
that's
be
number one.
This could be a 2-hour discussion, but I'll try to.
Well,
I'll try to
we can
capsulize it if I
Yeah,
can.
please, because do we know this?
Okay.
I don't.
I
There
know
we
you
go.
have to be 18
For
or like 21.
Depends
That's
on where
actually-
Yeah,
you
depends
are
on where you
and
are.
what kind of gun you're
No,
buying. And
Depends what kind of firearm you're buying.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, yes. Let's.
so the
take
state of Michigan,
Very, yeah.
state of Michigan has gun laws, and the federal government has gun laws. As a federal firearms license dealer, I have to marry the two, and I can't violate either one of them. So, with the federal government and with the state of Michigan, a person 18 years or older can purchase a long gun. And I'm going to show you some hypocrisy in the law that is just absolutely stunning and may appall you, as a matter of fact. 18 or older can purchase a long gun. You must be 21 years or older to purchase a handgun from a federal firearms license dealer. However, an 18-year-old can in fact purchase a handgun from another citizen
Oh, that's very
with a
interesting.
purchase permit. Okay?
Whoa.
So here's the hypocrisy that I find. This is kind of stunning. So I could have an 18-year-old person come into my store. He could not buy the smallest caliber handgun that I have.
He
He
can't.
could not buy a 22 target handgun from me. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so if it might be the least dangerous gun.
He can't do that.
He could, however, by law, buy the most devastating AR rifle with a 30-round capacity and chambered in a .556 caliber. He can buy 10 of those if he wants. So,
Tell me a reason for that.
well, I think it's historical. I think because years ago, as our country was developing, people were raised in a rural environment. Some of the primary sources of their food was hunting. So, as a rancher or a farmer, I'd want my kid to be able to go out and hunt, so he needed to be able to lawfully carry a long gun. because that's what's most closely associated with
Hunting.
hunting. But nonetheless, I had a 19-year-old Detroit police officer in my store the other day. I couldn't sell him anything.
He was already a police
Oh,
officer at
absolutely.
19.
There's plenty of 19.
Whoa, I had
Okay.
no idea.
I can't sell him anything. So tell me there's not some hypocrisy there. I mean, kid's going to throw his life on the line every day for many of us.
And he can't
I
get a
can't even
gun.
sell him ammunition and go practice on my range. I can't do it.
Well, where do they practice? I mean, if they're cops, they have to practice somewhere.
She could give him ammunition, perfectly legal.
Oh.
There's
Okay.
other sources to buy than
Yes.
federally licensed
Yes.
gun dealers.
Yes.
And
Correct.
that
Yes.
is the
That's
essence of
the
the
scary-
problem. It's
There you
not
go.
so much
Yeah.
that it's a
That's-
hypocrisy, it's that
yeah.
nobody is willing to bring those laws into line and say, no, you can't purchase at a gun show or from your cousin or, you know, from some guy who puts an ad out that he's selling guns. That should be regulated. And there should be a standard for all sales. That's one of the huge loopholes too with the background check, because you know if you're buying a gun that's not from a federally licensed dealer, no, the rules don't apply anymore.
She's correct. 100% correct.
My.
So you know there, and I don't know that I term it as hypocrisy, as just these giant gaps in the rules that are supposed to be in place to keep us safe and to keep responsible gun owners, they're on the right side of the law, not to penalize them, but to have everybody following those same rules.
It's fascinating to me. This whole situation is fascinating because more personal experiences jump into my head, and because I was always nervous about guns, you know, just yeah. But I've had friends. I had this dear, precious friend who happened to have been a West Point cadet when we met, and when he grew up, when he left that, he lived in New Mexico for a long time, and I went out to visit the family about 7 or 8 years ago, and he was packing. We went into a restaurant and he was wearing his holster and his gun. I wasn't used to that. That was not my culture, and I said, Dave, why do you need this? Oh, I have to have my gun at all times. And okay, and he took me to a wonderful sporting store that I had never heard of because I was so sheltered. And he said to this guy behind the counter, he said, I want her to take a look at that gun. And he put a gun in my hand. It was a lady's gun. That, I swear, that's what he said. It was a lady's gun that fit into a purse.
Marketing tool.
There's plenty of guns.
But
that fit into it.
but I, and I'm a lefty, so I put that gun in my hand. I cannot begin to tell you how comfortable I was holding that gun. It was surprising to me.
They're ergonomically friendly.
Evidently,
Is that their best feature?
but I stood and he laughed out loud. I said, Dave, this feels so good in my hand. He said, ha ha.
So what made it feel good? I'm going to ask you, Uni. I'm going to put you on the spot. Did it feel empowering?
I don't know. That's a very good question. Probably a
Okay.
little bit.
All right.
And the fact that I'm a shrimp, so it actually fit my hand. You know, it didn't go wobbling off. But it was odd. That feeling of, but I quickly put it away because I said, I don't think I want to do this. But still in all.
Well,
it
all right,
was
so you raised an
interesting.
issue at the beginning of the show, and so I find this kind of ironic. You had a niece
Oh, yeah.
who was killed during the discharge of celebratory gunfire
And
on
by
New
the
Year's
way,
Eve.
and I have to tell you before you hold your thought, because I forgot something. Where that shot came from was so fierce that when the police tried to send the bullet to the FBI, they couldn't tell what kind of a gun it was because it was so smashed into her head, into her neck.
So we know celebratory gunfire is an issue. It's particularly an issue in the city of Detroit.
Uh-huh.
So what I've done for the last 8 years is several days before New Year's Eve, I don't sell ammunition out the door.
Ah.
And that's my way of participating in delivering a message that this is reckless and dangerous behavior. I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. How come you didn't know that?
Because I'm an idiot.
No, that's not why. It's because it's not newsworthy.
That's right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually think I did see a
Yeah,
story in the news on it. But
I
of course,
cajoled a couple of the TV stations to.
yeah.
To make sure they.
But I mean, I'm probably more attuned to
Right.
news stories like
Correct.
that than the
Right,
average public.
right.
But I agree. I was surprised and impressed.
Yeah.
And I thought that should be a thing with gun dealers because, you know, it's not to say people don't already have a stockpile of ammunition at home, but for those impulsive people who want to celebrate that particular holiday, 4th of July, New Year's Eve, the typically noisy holidays, they're the ones that are running out buying it at the last minute because they don't target shoot and everything. They just have that gun at home and they're like, oh, I'm going to fire my gun. It's a holiday. So I think, you know, it's another way that lives can be saved, even if it's just one life.
I've been socially bullied over that.
I'm not surprised.
obnoxious.
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
surprised
She's
for
not
s-
surprised. She knows.
for stepping outside of the bounds of what's acceptable
Because,
for a
yeah,
gun
it's
owner and a
because-
gun dealer.
But see, you're a very interesting person.
Listen, I haven't quite heard that one before. But
Well,
thank
it's
you.
true because, well, you first of all, you're a retired police person.
I am.
Yes. And you're a gun shop owner.
I am that.
Yes. And you're a guy that tries to keep within the law.
Well,
'Cause
that's
you're a
mandatory.
cop. Yeah, well, but it's because of who you are. And I've come across folks that are not that, that don't have that much integrity.
So, is it okay if I make a suggestion to these?
You're
young
allowed.
ladies?
This is
All right,
my.
so
This is
as
the
this
round table.
debate continues, I'm going to give you some advice, maybe, to help you. Few definitions aren't clear.
Yeah.
We don't even have a consensus on what an assault rifle is. We don't know. No one agrees on it. There's differing opinions. So, I mean, first we could say that anything could be used as an assault weapon, including this. But when it comes to the firearms, particularly the military-styled ARs, you can have two schools of thought. Some people will define an assault weapon as a fully automatic weapon. Other people will describe an assault weapon as a semi-automatic firearm. Do you kids know the difference?
Semi-automatic, doesn't it? It's like if you shoot it once, then it doesn't trigger like an automatic, like bullets.
good.
But the fully automatic, you pull the trigger once and it fires like different rounds.
Correct. Yeah, a semi-automatic is one bullet per trigger squeeze. Fully automatic, as long as you're holding that trigger down, it's going to fire. Now, those are illegal in our society. There's been modifications to firearms which will duplicate and replicate that effect, such as the bump stocks that we've heard about.
Right.
Yeah.
And now they're
Okay.
bad.
But for purposes of your debates, for purposes of your position, I think it would behoove you to know and describe what these firearms are and how they operate. So it might sound a little ironic, but you're probably going to need some firearm knowledge to put forth your position in a sophisticated fashion.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, kind of study them. I hate to tell you to study guns,
I'm all for
but
that.
maybe you should. That's kind of what I'm saying.
And just because we're pretty close to wrapping up, I can't stand it because this has been. I hope you've enjoyed your discussion. He's scary because he's so smart. No, so happy, scary. And by the way, I have friends who say, listen to her when she says something like that because she means the opposite.
Oh, dear.
Now I'm traumatized.
yes.
Thanks a lot.
But no problem. But have we learned something today?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
And I'm sorry that one of our guests somehow didn't make it today, but I'm happy that you came, and I'm happy to meet you, and I hope that we will see each other again. And you keep us safe, please, Senor.
I think we all have that obligation.
Yes,
don't
we do.
We're working on it too at
Yes.
Moms Demand
There
Action
is
for
no,
Gun Sense.
and yes, and if we can just get whatever rules are out there to have people abide by those rules, because there are rules, and they just haven't. They've been slightly ignored by many people,
They've been majorly ignored by many.
Well,
many people.
that's part of it. Yeah, definitely
Yes,
that's
well,
part
that
of it.
was
But there's
again
still
my
some good ideas
sarcasm
for
came
laws.
through
Yeah.
again. Mea culpa, mea culpa.
Yeah, there's a couple of good laws that are out there that could make a difference too. Red
Yes.
flag laws, for
Yes,
example.
Yes, and I really,
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we please have you engage the young ladies over here and maybe ask for a little bit more information?
No
and their
problem.
opinions and stuff like that.
yes.
And then we'll go straight from there. So go from looking at this.
Carmi?
Over here. We're still recording. So go from looking over at here and then engage the young ladies.
Of course,
right?
of
And
course.
then we need to keep it short.
Short is
because
short.
that's-
Short is good because I'm 4'10".
Okay.
But no, yeah, of course. So as you go forth, both of you, and go back to class, and obviously experience what is happening around the world today, it would behoove you, I think, yes, to listen to all sides and to understand what's going on with people's lives. And so what do you think you're going to do the minute you get back to school?
My social justice teacher, Mr. Stetz, we have different discussions on topics that people are ignorant to, such as the actual laws for guns, because especially in our generation, we say enough is enough, but we don't really understand about guns, and we don't really understand about firearms, so I'm going to try to use this opportunity to explain to them like what all of this really means and how we can help protect our youth and in schools and outside of school.
Okay.
Definitely.
Veronica.
I'll bring it back to be able to talk with, I know I have fellow students that I'll talk to about things, especially like violence with firearms. And it's definitely going to keep me more informed because I do understand I need to know both sides of the debate to truly formulate an opinion on it. And that's what I try to do in anything that I formulate an opinion on. I try to, if I'm going to like voice my opinion on something, I want both sides of it so I know that my opinion is truly coming from me and is coming from enough information, and that's what I'm going to spread to other people that I talk to about controversial issues like this.
How come you're so smart? Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. And I thank the City of Southfield for allowing us to do this. This is too wonderful. And the Channel 15 staff. And if you have questions, just call the studio. And I thank you all so much for being with us today. You are all astonishing. I never did like you, but but seriously, folks, you were just amazing, and I thank you all. And Southfield, we have to keep talking to each other. We can't win anything in a society if we don't speak to each other. Mwah! Good.